They told him to calm down. Calm down when he stared down a bowler after getting hit. Calm down when he celebrated a wicket like it was a war won. Calm down when his eyes turned to fire at the crease, daring the world to come for him. For years, the critics had the same verdict. Too aggressive, too emotional, too much. Pundits called it a liability. Oppositions called it a weakness to exploit. The world looked at Virat Kohli's anger and saw a flaw. But what if they were looking at the wrong thing? What if the anger wasn't the problem? What if the anger was the engine? What if everything the world tried to correct about Virat Kohli was actually the very source of his greatness? In this video, we're going inside the psychology of one of the most intense competitors the world of sport has ever seen. We'll explore the grief that lit the fire, the failure that nearly broke him, and the slow, painful transformation of raw fury into something no bowler on earth could contain. Because this is not a story about cricket. It's a story about what happens when a human being learns to turn their pain inward and use it. This is the truth behind the intensity. It begins not on a stadium pitch, but in a hospital corridor. 3 in the morning, December 2006. Virat Kohli was 18 years old, batting overnight on 40 not out in a Ranji Trophy match when his father suffered a fatal heart attack. His family broke down. But Virat could not cry. There was no emotion. He went blank. That blankness is not numbness. Psychologists recognize it as a specific kind of shock. The mind protecting itself from what the heart cannot yet hold. And what Kohli did next would quietly define every chapter of his career that followed. Despite his devastating personal loss, he made the courageous decision to return to the field the next morning, prioritizing his team's difficult situation over mourning. He scored 90 runs, helping Delhi avoid collapse against a potent Karnataka bowling attack. Robin Uthappa, who was on the opposing Karnataka side that day, recalled something he could never forget. Kohli batted without his usual burning fire. It was more like an ember, steady, controlled, keeping everything in check. That ember, that is where the psychology of Virat Kohli begins. Not in the celebration, not in the aggression the world would later come to both admire and fear, but in a quiet, grief-soaked decision made by an 18-year-old boy who had just held his father as he took his final breath. As per his mother, Kohli's demeanor shifted noticeably after his father's death. He took on cricket with newfound seriousness, prioritizing playing time and dedicating himself fully to the sport. Grief had become fuel. He just didn't know yet how to burn it cleanly. For years, the anger came out raw. It spilled onto pitches. It showed up in stare downs, in chest beating, in celebrations that looked to some like provocation. The world saw a player who couldn't control himself, a hothead, a liability waiting to cost India in a high-stakes moment. But what they were watching was not a lack of discipline. It was an excess of feeling, completely unprocessed, pouring out sideways. This is a well-documented psychological phenomenon. When grief and intensity have no structured outlet, they leak. They emerge as volatility, as reaction, as emotion that surprises even the person experiencing it. Kohli wasn't being unprofessional. He was doing the only thing he knew how to do with a fire that had been burning inside him since he was 18 years old. He was letting it out, anywhere he could. The transformation hadn't happened yet. That would require failure. Fresh off a career-high score of 183, Kohli nosedived into a string of IPL failures. The man who had dominated the biggest stage found himself struggling to hit double figures. Mentally, shattered. Then came the mirror moment. One look in the mirror post-shower shattered Virat Kohli's self-image, forcing a brutal question. How can an international cricketer look like this? That reflection flipped his life forever. Most people look in the mirror and feel shame. Kohli looked in the mirror and felt something else entirely. He felt rage. And for the first time, he pointed it in the right direction. Inward. From employing military discipline with his diet to directing his rage inwards, Kohli matured to find unmatched success in international cricket. He lost about 11 kilograms in 8 months. He monitored his diet with military discipline, zeroing in on a specific brand of mineral water and setting himself hourly reminders to drink specific amounts. This is the psychological turning point most people miss. The anger didn't disappear. It didn't get managed away or meditated into stillness. It got redirected. It became structure. It became the obsessive, relentless, almost frightening work ethic that would turn Virat Kohli from a talented cricketer into something that looked, to bowlers worldwide, like a force of nature. Anger pointed outward is destruction. Anger pointed inward is transformation. But the story wasn't over, because transformation is not a single event, it is a cycle. In 2014, England broke him. Not his body, his mind. He was 25, a generational talent talent being groomed for leadership when he admitted years later that during the England tour, he felt like it was the end of the world. He didn't know what to do, what to say to anyone, or how to communicate, and he couldn't tell anyone he wasn't feeling great mentally because he never knew how that would be taken. He failed publicly. Repeatedly. The entire cricket world watched and dissected and debated. He was too aggressive, too emotional, not technically sound enough. The same fire that had made him feared was suddenly evidence of his limitations. He went quiet. And silence, for someone like Kohli, is its own kind of breaking. But he came back. Not with noise, with work, with the same redirected anger that had rebuilt his body 2 years before. He returned to England 3 years later, and in that 2018 tour, he scored 593 runs in a test series, the most by any Indian on English soil in decades. He didn't just return, he answered. That is the psychology of the converted. The anger, once refined, becomes something opponents cannot prepare for, because it isn't reactive anymore, it is purposeful. Then came the years that almost undid everything. Between 2019 and 2022, the centuries stopped. 3 years, the longest drought of his career. And this time, unlike the technical struggles of 2014, Kohli couldn't find a technical fix, because the problem wasn't technical. He admitted that he had been trying to fake his intensity, convincing himself he had it, but his body was telling him to stop. He wasn't excited to train, wasn't excited to practice, and that really disturbed him. This was not who he was, and he literally needed to step away. He admitted that he had been faking intensity and pretending everything was fine, while in reality, he was mentally exhausted. This is burnout. Not the kind that comes from laziness, but the kind that comes from giving everything you have, every single day for over a decade, with nothing left in reserve. The fire had consumed the wood it was built on. For the first time in 10 years, he didn't touch his bat for a month. He went on holiday with his family. He sat still with the quiet. And when he returned, something had shifted. He worked with sports psychologist Paddy Upton, someone who had played cricket himself before becoming a psychologist, in an ongoing process that helped Kohli regain his mental fortitude and performance consistency. He scored a century in the Asia Cup, his first in 3 years. The crowd did not just cheer, they exhaled. What Kohli found, after years of burning and rebuilding and breaking and returning, is something most of us spend our whole lives searching for. He found the difference between anger as reaction and anger as identity. The young Kohli used anger to survive. It kept him on his feet the morning after his father died. It got him through rejection and failure and public humiliation. But survival anger is only enough for so long. Eventually, it burns through you. The Kohli who emerged from the drought was different, calmer on the surface, but no less fierce underneath. He had learned to channel the intensity without being consumed by it, to compete with fire but recover with stillness, to carry grief as fuel rather than as weight. That is not a talent. That is a discipline, one earned through loss, failure, and a willingness to look at yourself honestly, even when the mirror shows you something painful. We spend a lot of time telling people to control their emotions, to suppress, to present calm, measured, unshakable composure to the world. But Virat Kohli's story suggests something more complicated and more human. The emotion is not the enemy. The direction is what matters. Anger becomes destruction when you point it at others. It becomes transformation when you point it at yourself, at your habits, your discipline, your excuses, your comfort zone. Kohli didn't become great despite his intensity. He became great because he learned what to do with it. And that lesson doesn't live only on a cricket pitch. It lives in anyone who has ever felt too much and been told that feeling was a flaw. It lives in the grief you carry quietly, in the fire that hasn't found its direction yet. The question was never whether the intensity was too much. The question was always, where are you pointing it? If this made you see something in yourself or in Kohli that you hadn't before, share your thoughts below. Every week we explore the hidden psychology behind the stories the world thinks it already knows. Subscribe and we'll see you in the next one.